The famine was even more appalling for those who'd fled from the Vietnamese. These were the families and followers of Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge who'd managed to escape with their leaders to the jungle. Now they were trapped. They were decimated. But the Vietnamese would not deliver the final blow. For months they were ravaged by dysentery, malaria and starvation. Without vital supplies of food and medicine, the jungle became a graveyard. Nine months after the Pol Pot regime had fallen, the survivors were finally allowed to stream out from the jungle and cross the border to find temporary sanctuary in Thailand. For the first time, their plight was exposed to the international press and television. Suddenly, the famine in Cambodia became headline news. When the outside world reacted, at last emergency aid began to flow. Quite separate from the Khmer Rouge, there were endless trails of refugees running a gauntlet to reach the border with Thailand. They called themselves the Free Khmers. They were risking everything for a chance to escape the famine, the Khmer Rouge and the Vietnamese. At first they were pushed back when the Thai authorities panicked. But once the Thais relented, hundreds of thousands were given sanctuary inside Thailand, while even more Kampucheans squatted in camps that sprawled along the border itself. Here in the wild west of Cambodia, the camps were ruled by black marketeers and warlords. In a circus of hope and despair, they fought with each other and preyed on the refugees. To add to the terror, there were also attacks on the camps by the Vietnamese army, the Thais, the Khmer Rouge, and rival guerrilla bands. This time the attack was launched from Thailand. The shelling continued for more than 4 hours. More than 100 civilians were killed, many were children. This man cries that his last remaining son has died. He was the only one left of his family because his wife and other children had all been killed before. Now he's alone, the man says. Despite the continual violence, the border camps were a magnet because here there was famine relief that Kampucheans could count on. The lion's share of international aid was eventually shipped to the Vietnamese side. But at the height of the crisis, it was the aid that flowed directly across the border that proved to be effective. In addition to feeding the refugees on the spot, the camps were also used as a land bridge to funnel rice and other supplies back to the interior. The Vietnamese had refused to allow the road or railway to be used, so everything depended on bullock carts, bicycles, and Kampucheans on foot. Up to 100,000 traffickers were plying the trails. Their journeys to and from the border were taking at least a week each way. Some were crossing to the other side of the country and taking much longer. There were bandits lying in wait and Vietnamese soldiers who extorted bribes. Nevertheless, in the course of a year, 150,000 tons of rice were carried across the land bridge. And apart from this, the traffickers were smuggling everything from cigarettes and coloured cloth to fishing line, medicines, music tapes. There was nothing, it seemed, that couldn't be bought and carried in from Thailand. When the traffickers emerged at the other end of their journey, there was only a token checkpoint before they were free to enter the market towns. Officially, the Vietnamese would never condone the traffic in aid and trade from the border. And from time to time, they called a halt by cutting the trails and attacking the border camps. But in general, they turned a blind eye because the black market trade was a lifeline. It was vital to Kampuchea, and it stretched right through to Vietnam. Ironically, Kampuchea had fallen back on capitalism in its crudest form. In this destitute economy, the only productive energy worth speaking of was sparked by profiteering. Compared to the black market, there was little incentive to work in the fields or even to hold a government job. Kampuchea had nothing produced for export, so gold was used as the only way to pay for the goods that came from the border. This was gold that families had hidden during the war and the term of Pol Pot's rule.
The military operation to overthrow Pol Pot was completed in 2 weeks, but the famine that followed lasted for 2 years. Why was that?
The food situation, yes. I would like to say that Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, we have been torn by war for 30 years. So if the European countries, they have passed through 5 years of World War, and Vietnam and the war in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia have much more bombs than twice the number of bombs in World War II. If the European countries, they need 5 years to rebuild up their countries, we need at least 30 years, if not more, because more bombs than in everywhere in the history.
But there was an immediate crisis.
Yeah.
And the
media?
An immediate. It was a very immediate crisis, life and death. It turned out to be death for a lot of people in 1979. Why didn't the socialist bloc respond more quickly?
We think if we have not responded to them, they could not survive, because in 79 it was a near starvation.
It was real starvation.
Yes, real starvation, because the regime of Pol Pot since 75, it is enslavation, and the socialist country, they have done their best. If there is no such aid from the socialist country and from the other countries in the world, from Western Europe, from the United States, and from your country and so on, they could not overcome these difficulties.
There is no question that for a certain period of time the